Good morning. Today I want to quickly go over the astrology behind the attempted assassination yesterday of Donald Trump. So let's see if I can share my screen. This will take me just a minute. I've got to get some things out of the way so I can see what I'm doing here. So just bear with me. Okay, so here we go. This will be the attempted assassination of Donald Trump. Now, what I want to look at are the transits at the time of that attempted assassination. And then I want to look at how those transits were affecting the chart for the United States of America. And the chart I use, my preferred chart, is the July 2nd, 1776 chart for the passage of the Declaration of Independence by the Continental Congress. Other charts can also be valid because the creation of America was not just a single event, it was a process. But I often find that that July 2nd chart works best whenever I look at things. Okay, and then thirdly, we'll look at how the transits at that moment were impacting Donald Trump. And this will help us understand first what sort of the general astrological weather was like at that moment, then why it impacted the United States, and lastly, why it impacted Donald Trump. Okay, let's begin. Now, according to what I've been able to find online, the shooting occurred at 6:11 p.m., July 13th, 2024, in Butler, Pennsylvania. And what we have going on astrologically is Mars conjunct Uranus conjunct Algol. That is a fixed star known as the Demon's Head. Now, I don't usually work with fixed star astrology, so I don't have a lot of experience with it, but at this particular moment, we not only have Mars conjunct Uranus, in fact, this conjunction becomes exact on July 15th, the day that the Republican National Convention begins. Uh, so that's interesting. Furthermore, this conjunction combines the energy, aggression, and anger of Mars with the hyperness, the creativity, but also the erraticness and revolutionary tendencies of Uranus. Now, when Mars and Uranus come together, it could work out in a good way. This could be very energized creativity, but when these two planets conjoin, most of the time it doesn't work out in a good way. Most of the time it involves anger and revolution. And coupled with this, they're both conjunct Algol, a fixed star that Arab astrologers referred to as the demon's head. And according to tradition, Algol is associated with all sorts of violent and unfortunate events, and sometimes even beheadings or wounds to the head. And that makes it rather interesting since, sure enough, Donald Trump received a slight wound to the head. And if you're not a supporter of Donald Trump, then you might even think of him as being himself the head demon. So, a lot of interesting connections you can make here. Now, we also had at this moment a T-square between Sun, Moon, and Chiron. In fact, it is we're almost at the first quarter moon at the time of this shooting. And that's also quite interesting. The ancient Babylonians saw the new moon, the quarter moons, and the full moons as times of tension. They referred to those days as evil days. They also called those days holy days. They were holy if you refrain from certain activities, but evil otherwise. Furthermore, there are modern statistical studies done by non-astrologers which show that certain medical conditions or physical conditions that we'd think of as stress related uh, are more likely to happen at the new, quarter, and full moons. For example, one study I've read found that mortality, death of patients occurred more often at the first quarter and the third quarter moon. Okay, in this case, the moon is also acting as a trigger, and Chiron is associated with wounding. And Chiron is still in Aries, which, sure enough, is associated with the head. So, again, it's all very interesting. What we're seeing so far is that on this day, at this moment, there was an increased likelihood of violence or revolutionary acts occurring somewhere in the world. And at this particular moment, when the moon was involved, there was an increased likelihood of wounding to occur somewhere in the world, maybe even more specifically, wounding to the head. And with the fixed star Algol involved, uh, that could also possibly intensify the situation and the likelihood of some very violent and unfortunate events happening, which again could involve some sort of wounding to the head. Now, on top of this, we also have Venus in opposition to Pluto. Pluto is in Aquarius, which signifies power in the hands of groups or power to the people. Venus is in Leo, uh, which has more to do with individual feelings about things and values that people have about things. So these two things are in conflict on this day. Uh, someone, someone's individual values are in conflict with the powers that be. Okay, so that is the general astrological weather at that moment. Some of this weather will persist for a few days, like Mars conjunct Uranus and Algol. Others, like the transits of the moon, move on very quickly. But let's look at how this astrological weather would likely impact the United States. And here's a bi-wheel where on the inside I have my chart for July 2nd, 1776, about the time that the Declaration of Independence was passed by the Continental Congress. Outside, I have the transits at the time of the shooting, and there were some tense things going on, which again increased the probability of certain kinds of acts. So we'll start with transiting Saturn, square natal Mars. Mars again is energy, activity, but also aggression and anger. Saturn is discipline, regulation, but also restriction and frustration. When you get a square between Saturn and Mars, there is a greater danger of anger just exploding. People getting so frustrated, or individuals getting so frustrated that that anger just uh, suddenly explodes. Okay, so this was a very volatile situation. And since Saturn is moving very slowly, this square is actually going to last for a while. It's not going away quickly. Now, also on this day, and lasting too for quite a while, is transiting Neptune, making a very strong square with natal Venus. Neptune is in the very last degree, the very last few minutes of Pisces. It's moving retrograde now, so it's not going to go into Aries quite yet. But what's interesting is this is exactly the aspect that was present at the start of the American Civil War. Neptune, in this case, well, at its best, it's inspiration and vision. At its worst, it's misinformation and confused thinking. Venus has to do not only with the pleasures we seek, but what we value as good and what we value as bad, not so good. And this is a time when muddled thinking and misinformation can come into conflict with people's values, and that can lead also to a volatile situation. So we've got these two harsh things going on with respect to America's chart right now. People are very divided still, and there is a greater chance of violence erupting as a result of this trancing Saturn square natal Mars. Okay, now to add to all of this, we have transiting Uranus making a semi-square with natal Sun. Minor aspects like the semi-square and the sesquiquadrant, they are turning points or breaking points. In this case, the revolutionary nature of Uranus, it's reaching sort of a breaking point with regard to the soul of the nation and leaders of the nation. So, this is a time when some revolutionary activity can suddenly happen and break through. On top of this, we still have transiting Chiron, conjunct natal Chiron. We have about a 3-degree orb here. Usually, I would not be so worried about this because they're moving apart. The aspect is waning. But on this particular day, transiting Chiron is making a very strong semi-square to natal Uranus. Again, this can be both physical and political wounding for the country. And something sudden and something of a revolutionary nature happening. So, these aspects show why the astrological weather on this day was making a particular impact on America. And some of these aspects, like Saturn square Mars and Neptune square Venus, they're going to last for a while. Okay. Now, uh, let's see. I could have also added transiting Mars to the semi-square to the natal sun. It's not exactly quite yet within that 1-degree orb, I don't believe, but it's it's very, very close to that. And because of its proximity to Uranus, it's probably going to be involved with the semi-square to natal sun also. So that adds acts of aggression and violence to the revolutionary acts of revolution nature of Uranus. So again, all of these aspects show you why the astrological weather on that day was likely going to have an effect upon America. Okay, and lastly, let's take a look at Donald Trump. He's got transiting Uranus and Mars very strongly squaring his natal Mars. At the very least, I've expected him to be very angry at this moment in time, very erratic at this moment in time. He would also be more prone to accidents, uh, also more prone to acts of violence. Uh, though I haven't talked about that part specifically before because acts of violence do not happen that often. Acts of political violence, that is, are not that common in the country. So, what would be most likely would be that this is a period where he is very angry and very erratic, and that could lead to accidents. In this case, the astrological aspects also led to a revolutionary act of violence. Trump also has transiting Chiron very strongly square natal Saturn. And this suggests some wounding related to his past karma, his past actions, wounding related to the structure that he has erected around himself. This could also cause wounding to his reputation because Saturn is conjunct Venus in his natal chart, and Venus rules his 10th house of status in society. So, lots of different ways this could work out, but certainly a heightened likelihood of wounding of some sort to Donald Trump. So these are two strong configurations, trancing aspects at the time of this shooting, which can have a very negative impact on him. However, he also has some very strong good aspects going on, which gave him lifelines. And from an astrological perspective, it appears that because of these lifelines, he was not seriously injured. He did not die. He was not killed. So let's take a quick look at these lifelines. The same transing Chiron, which is strongly squaring his Saturn, is also making a strong sextile to his Sun. So this is going to be healing to his being and to his reputation, his status. Again, the same transiting Mars and Uranus that are so strongly squaring his natal Mars, they're also strongly making a sextile to his natal Venus. That is going to help his status in society and help his sense of well-being here. Okay, so that's another very strong lifeline. And finally, transiting ascendant. I haven't shown this in the other charts because it wasn't making that much of a difference. But in this transiting chart, 15 degrees of Sagittarius was coming up over the horizon, and that was making a strong sextile to his natal Chiron, again providing some healing to Donald Trump. So this shows us both the harsh aspects going on at the time of that shooting, but also the beneficial aspects going on that acted as lifelines uh, at that particular moment. And I believe because of these lifelines, he was not seriously injured and he just got grazed a bit on one side of his head. Okay, so that is the astrology of the shooting for Donald Trump. I'll stop sharing at this point. And I'm back here. And so this provides some astrological explanation behind the events that were occurring at that time, at the moment that someone attempted to assassinate Donald Trump. So I hope you found that interesting and somewhat illuminating, and I hope you join me again for additional videos. But for now, I'll just say so long and be well.